Today, we see if gamers got bored by war that never changes, or found their way to success in the wasteland. Let's find out if anyone played Fallout 4. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I am BD, and this is Did Anyone Play, a series where we investigate, analyze, and determine the truth about how much gamers have actually played a game like Fallout 4. How do we do this? We use trophy and achievement milestones within games and then compare those results to an ever-growing database to evaluate and rank games compared to the rest of the industry. Using objective data and statistical comparisons, we can draw conclusions. We aren't reviewing the game in a traditional sense. Our goal is to provide analysis that can be better used to understand player preference while ignoring game sales and hype to ensure we see reality as it truly is. Please drop a like or a sub to the channel if you want more of these types of videos. We're just starting out, so anything you do is very much appreciated. And a quick spoiler warning as we may be talking about some elements of late game progression. So let's find out if anyone actually played Fallout 4 on Xbox, PS4, and Steam. Remember that all percentages we'll be talking about here come from the total number of players that have actually launched and or played the game, not bought the game. So these results are a full reflection on how players played Fallout 4. The first milestone that players will reach is called War Never Changes. This milestone is achieved when a player completes the tutorial of Fallout 4. A player will make their character, survive a nuclear war, be put into a vault, and then revived and leave the vault. When the player finishes the tutorial and enters the wasteland, they are awarded this milestone. So how many players made it to this very early milestone for Fallout 4? On Xbox, 63.6% of players got to this first milestone. For PlayStation, it was 88.2%. And for Steam, it was 83.2%. So let's pause here to evaluate. Steam and PlayStation are off to a solid start, but for Xbox, we see that over 1/3 of players never make it through the tutorial. Comparing that to only 12% quitting on PlayStation, you can see we might have a problem brewing here. Here's a quick look in graph form, and I put the database average up there. Steam and PS4 are above the average for Milestone 1, so that's all good, but Xbox is once again starting out behind the 8 ball. So what is Fallout 4? It's an action RPG set in a post-apocalyptic open world that contains the city of Boston and the surrounding Massachusetts area. The story takes place in the year 2287, and you play as a character who witnessed the murder of their spouse and the kidnapping of their child and set out in search of that child. It was developed and published by Bethesda, and Fallout 4 released for all platforms in November of 2015. The second milestone all players would likely reach is called When Freedom Calls. This is awarded after a player completes the first early mission, When Freedom Calls, when you first meet the Minutemen, kill the Raiders, experience power armor, and kill a Deathclaw for the first time. So for Steam, 67.4% of players made it this far. PlayStation is at 68.2%, and Xbox is at 46.7%. PlayStation and Steam are still above average here and trending decently. It's always good to understand the competition a game was up against when it launched. What was happening around November 10th of 2015 in the gaming world? Well, titles like Call of Duty Black Ops 3, Star Wars Battlefront, and Need for Speed all came out on the platforms around this time. If we look at Google Trends here, we see that Fallout 4 in blue is really riding high over the competition. So hype was very high for Fallout 4, but I think we can say competition was very strong as well, but not in the same genre of game. We like to pick a mid-game milestone for our third marker. For Fallout 4, we chose Unstoppable Wanderer. This is awarded when the player reaches level 25. This will be achieved through normal gameplay and can happen about midway through the story. How many players are left at this point in the game? For Xbox, it's at 22.6%. On PlayStation, we have 35.6%. And finally for Steam, 42.7% are left. Steam is still trending above average, but PS4 has dropped a bit more. Xbox continues to underperform at this stage of the game. It's a steady decline of players leaving Fallout 4 as the game progresses. So how did Fallout 4 do with critics? Well, Metacritic for PS4 has it at an 87 out of 100. Xbox is a little better with an 88 out of 100. And for Steam, the reviews show very positive recent and all-time with 215,000 reviews. These are great reviews, and you can see that even major review outlets scored Fallout 4 very strongly. The reception was very good for the game overall. The most important milestone is our fourth one. This is for completing the main story and what we will ultimately be basing our score on. It definitely shows how many players finished the game and truly played Fallout 4. This milestone is Prepared for the Future, and it's awarded for completing the campaign and deciding the fate of the Commonwealth. Either path a player chooses will award them this milestone. So where does Fallout 4 end up on the different platforms? On Xbox, 13.7% of players completed the game. For Steam, it was 20.6%, and on PlayStation, 21.4% did just that. Let's pause here since we've reached the end of the game. We want to check the percentage of players that quit each platform after making it through the first milestone, but failing to reach game completion. Here, all the platforms are doing worse than average. Xbox lost the most, while PS4 and Steam are nearly tied statistically. No real standouts here. Finally, to get a feel for how completion is treated this game, the rare milestone 5 chosen for Fallout 4 is called Benevolent Leader. This milestone can be achieved if the player can reach maximum happiness in a large settlement. For Xbox, we see that 0.7% of players reach this milestone, for PlayStation it was 2.3%, and for Steam, 2.9% of players did it. Now let's see the full picture. Here are the raw milestones for our platforms for Fallout 4, and we have also added the database averages for each milestone in gray for comparison purposes. Let's get into it. For Fallout 4, we do see now the traditional Xbox initial drop. This may be due to the game being available on Game Pass. It would have been nice to see this data before that happened, as it might have aligned better with the other platforms. Speaking of which, Steam and PlayStation do start in a strong position. For Fallout 4, we actually see a near linear trend line down to the milestone 4. That indicates that we have constant player retention problems throughout the whole of the game. Players are dropping at a steady rate and not at any one big blocking point in the game. We see that PlayStation ultimately comes out the best at milestone 4, but Steam does the best at milestone 5. So that's our final tally for Fallout 4 milestones. But now let's see how the game stacks up against all other games in our database and find out if anyone truly played Fallout 4. We use milestone 4 as our ultimate ranking target. Here are the results for each platform for milestone 4 once again. It's time to reveal the final score Fallout 4 has in our database. Here we go. Steam is at a 4 out of 10, Xbox is at a 2 out of 10, and PlayStation is a 5 out of 10. Fallout 4's best performance is only average on PlayStation, lower than average on Steam, and not many people played Fallout 4 on Xbox. This does look like a bit of a disappointing performance for a game compared to the rest of the industry, especially for a game with so much hype and strong reviews at launch. So those are the scores. But let's see if we can tease out some other observations by looking at these results in different ways. It's time for the deep dive. Let's start with progressive player loss. Each milestone shows how many players have stopped playing the game at that particular point. Xbox leads in players lost at every milestone, while Steam and PlayStation trade spots for best hold through the course of the milestones. Moving on, we can look at milestone player retention. This calculation only takes into account the player population loss as a percentage compared to the previous milestone. Two main points of interest here. One, we see the high losses at all milestones, and that underpins the fact that no one point of the game created a large player loss, but that large player loss occurred fairly evenly across the game. Secondly, we see the large drop on Xbox at milestone 1, and Xbox still loses the most at milestone 2 and 3, but interestingly, we see a large drop on Steam for milestone 4. How about completionist? How did the rarest milestones shake out on different platforms? Here we see Steam take nearly 50% of the results, with PlayStation at 40%, and Xbox making up the rest. Finally, we check on early versus late game retention. When you read a chart like this, the best performers are further away from the center of the circle. Early game, Steam and PlayStation are right on top of each other, and Xbox lagging quite a ways behind. For the end game, we actually see that all platforms perform about the same, and finally for completionists, we see Steam slightly pull ahead of the others. Let's take one final look at all the platforms and their milestone 4 results, but this time we show you the full percent rank within our database. This is to give you a detailed view of how the rankings played out. You can use this data as you will. Let's wrap this up. So what are our major takeaways from all the data? Fallout 4 came to gamers with a huge amount of hype and great reviews. From that, you would expect a high ranking as players got their hands on it. What we do see is that Fallout 4 really seems to have underperformed where you would have expected it to be. The highest rating is only average, and that's on PlayStation. Even Steam just gets to below average, and Xbox results are truly disappointing. It's possible that the game is too large, or the story not engaging enough to keep players sticking around. In fact, we see that there's no singular point in the game where we lose a lot of players. Instead, we see a constant and continuous loss of players throughout the game. It's practically linear throughout the milestones, and that really speaks to more of a core issue with either game design, mechanics, or the world in general. And once again, we have to bring up the specter of Game Pass. It's hard to attribute the early loss of players on Xbox for Fallout 4 to anything else. It does say something that if you aren't possibly looking for this type of game, but you try it out using Game Pass, even the early tutorial presenting the best parts of the game and the most engaging story elements aren't enough to keep gamers playing at a high rate. The Fallout series is recognized as a massive property in the gaming community. Fallout 4 was the fourth main game in the series, and commercially it did very well. The reviews were great, the hype was huge, the freedom the game provides the player is sometimes overwhelming. That being said, we see that over time, gamers seem to drift away when playing Fallout 4. Maybe it happened earlier, maybe it happened later, but it cannot be denied that not as many people played Fallout across all the platforms as we would have expected. Exceptionally reviewed games should not have average or below average rankings for finishing them. The point of developing such large and deep worlds is so that gamers truly get to experience what the developers work so hard to create. Hopefully this data can help inform better outcomes in the future. And that's a wrap. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to do all the YouTube support stuff. I'd love to read any comments you have down below. What conclusions did you all take from this data? And of course, feel free to suggest the next game we should look at to determine if anyone played it. Until then, take care of yourself and each other.